Hey folks, we're doing wheel bearings today. This is a 2010 F-150 four-wheel drive. This, however, would be the same as at least 2009 to 2014. I know they were all the same at least on those years. Might be a little bit different on years closer previous or more recent than that. So we're going to just do step by step, the cheap way, doing it yourself. Hopefully you learn something along the way in doing this. It's not impossible. It can be done with all hand tools. I have air tools. However, it's not imperative that you have air tools. I'll get this wheel off and we'll get going on the steps to get to the wheel bearing. Alright, got that wheel off and out of the way. As you see here, I do have it under the truck. If the truck falls, it's going to ruin the rim, but that's a lot cheaper than the damage it would do to me or the rest of the front end. We need to get the caliper off, and you can do this one of two ways. You can take the caliper off and then the cradle, or you can take it all off as one. In this instance, I know I've got a pin that's sticking on this caliper, so I'm going to take the caliper off. That way I can work on that pin a little later on. This is a 13 millimeter for the caliper bolts. Might help if I go the right way. It's a little tighter in here for an impact wrench, which is what I'm using a socket. You can disconnect the tie rod to give yourself a little bit more room, which we will likely do once we get a little farther into the project here. That will help you get to the bolts that hold the wheel bearing in. There always seems to be a little bit of pressure on the brake pads just to get them off, so you want to compress the pads to give yourself a little bit more clearance to get this caliper off. A lot of times you'll see a rust ring up here. These calipers are still pretty new. They're less than a year old, so I don't have the rust ring to deal with. However, something that's been on there a little longer is going to have a rust ring around the top, so you need to open them pads up a little bit to get around there. The easiest way I found to do that is this is the clamp I use just for wood projects or whatever, but usually it's enough just to put a little squeeze on that piston. Let it relax. It's not really relaxing, it's just adjusting. Now we'll back that off. That caliper's pretty loose now. Very loose, actually. You'll always want to support it. Hang this caliper. You don't want it hanging from the brake lines. You can damage the brake lines pretty bad like that. You may also notice, you really can't see it, let me adjust you. I've got a lift on this truck. If you look closely, you can see how close that control arm is, upper control arm to the spring. And you can see that block up there. It's just an aluminum block on top of that strut. It stretches things out. As I was saying, I had a little interruption I had to deal with there. It stretches everything out, basically just kind of pushes everything down. Lifts are cool. Would I do it again? I probably won't. It's hell on ball joints. It's hell on U-joints. So just bear in mind that if you do put a lift on, you're gonna go through some parts. So you need to be prepared to work on the vehicle just to save yourself some money. You know, do things yourself, save money that way too. It's nothing you can't do at home, but it's a bit of a time suck. So just be aware of that. All right, so that's hanging out of the way. Now I need to get this cradle off, pull these pads off before they hit the floor and get ruined. And there's just 2 bolts, one high, one low on that cradle. I'm not sure if it's really a cradle, that's what I call it. Not too much to get off of there. I thought they were 18s anyway. Scratch that, it's a 21. And I need to get my 1/2-inch socket wrench. I opted for the breaker bar. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the torque specs on these bolts I think are 150 pounds, so it take a little bit to get them loose. Again, you can use an impact on there. If you've got that tie rod broke loose, you can just spin it whichever way. I try not to use the air tools as much as I can when I'm doing videos like this. Just for a simple fact, not everybody's got them. And I don't know, you know, you see a lot of videos, they got all the cool tools and stuff, and that's cool and all, but not everybody's got that stuff, so you don't want to really give the optic that, hey, I can do this because I got cool tools, and you've only got hand tools. That's not the case. That slide pin I was talking about on here, that your calipers go onto these pins. Oops, wrong way. Onto these two. And you can see how this one moves freely. This one, on the other hand, does not. It's seized up. So after I'm done with this, after you see me take it apart, obviously putting it back together is in reverse, but I need to either break that pin free or get a new cradle. You'll notice that my rotor pops right off. I don't have to beat on it, no nothing, because down here on the face of the wheel bearing and on the back of here, I put some caliper grease on that before I slap it all together. It keeps it from rusting and seizing together. If you didn't have that before, prepare to beat the hell out of that rotor to try and get it off of there. And on top of that, you will likely hurt the rotor. So if that is a necessary step, that you may end up replacing the rotor. The other option is when that rotor's on there, put your lug nuts on so you don't smash into these threads and hit the top of that hat of the rotor. And you can hit that pretty hard to get it to bust free. A lot of times you'll get lucky with that, sometimes you don't. It just depends on how badly it's seized up. This is the dust cap for the CV joint, or as regular people know it, that's where the axle bolts in to hold it into the teeth for the four-wheel drive. I think that is a 13, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Ryobi was not the way to go with that. So I'll have to get me a 1/4 inch drive. Uh, 13 millimeter on that CV joint nut. You need to have this backer plate out of the way. There's three, is there three? Yeah. 3 bolts on this backer plate. They are 8 millimeter. At this point, I'm going to take the tie rod end loose. Put that nut back on there so that I can hit it. That loose. Take the nut off. Just kind of pull that out of the way. Now, without fighting the steering, I can move this around a little bit to get to my 4 bolts that hold the wheel bearing on. If I'm not mistaken, those are 18s on the wheel bearing. Prior to that, though, I need to disconnect there's an ABS cable you need to disconnect. That's right up here. Let me see if I can get that in focus for you. I'll bring you this way. Find my flashlight so I can show you what I'm doing, and I'll show you where that was. Basically, you follow up from the wheel bearing, follow that cable, and it leads you right back here. And under there, you pluck that out of there, and there's your plug. You unplug it. the wheel bearing that I got came with a new ABS cable. So I will disconnect all of that. It's also attached to a cable down here, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a 10 millimeter. Bear with me. That is actually, that's an 8 millimeter holding this bracket on. It also supports the brake line going to the caliper. So we got that loose. And then it would appear that I'm ready to start breaking the wheel bearing loose off of here. Pretty sure these are 18 millimeter. They are indeed 18 millimeter. I might have to go get my shallow socket. We'll see here in just a minute. I have to get a universal joint to get on that bottom one. Now, you'll see in a minute that I don't have everything, and I will say all you haters can suck it, because yes, that is a chrome universal on here. I don't have everything, and if it explodes, it explodes. I've spent a couple bucks and I get another one. One day I will have universals for impacts. Today is not that day. It's mainly because I'm a cheap ass, honestly. Goes without saying, I watched a video on this too, just like you're doing, and that guy's universal, not universal, wheel bearing popped right off of there, like it was brand spanking new. The bolts came out and it, donk, it fell off. Well, many times that's not the case. I will go as far as to say it's damn near impossible for that to be the case. I'm going to try tapping on it either side. I do have a slide hammer, and we may make that come into play. But we'll try this way first, because you may not have a slide hammer. And this is actually working quite nicely. And there it is. That's it. There is the wheel bearing. I can feel it. don't think you're going to pick up on the noise that's making. Let's see if I can bring it up. You can hear it's kind of gritty. Now imagine you got the weight of the truck on there plus a 35-inch 1250 tire, putting all that tension on it. It tends to get a little loud. So I'm gonna clean my hands up and we'll get this here cleaned out. There's a lot of, I can't say a lot, there's a little bit of junk, filthy grease in there, and that's more likely due from probably those bearings going south on me. Yeah, I'll return here in just a sec. All right, got the old stuff out. New wheel bearing here. It's a Detroit axle. Some people don't have much good to say about Detroit axle, but I've had pretty good luck with their stuff. It's a good idea to match them up to the old, have a look at them, to which I've already done off camera. Make sure it's the same thing. Make sure you're getting the right product. Now I got these on Amazon for, I paid $134. Now that's been a little while ago. I got these a while back, and I'm just getting to them now. It was $134 for the pair. When I just looked a little while ago, I was $167. Beware to keep cussing down to a minimum. They do have a little cap in here, and that's to hold those needle bearings. The needle bearings ride on the CV right here, but that's to keep those in place during shipping so that they don't come flying out of there. So when you're replacing this, you put it back on. Average, I've heard anything from to have left and right wheel bearings done at a shop is anywhere between $600 and $900. I would say with the $134 that I paid and the, well, I don't know, hour per side into it, I'm going to say that I'm far ahead. Two things. There are, let me disconnect you from here without dropping this bearing. On the four-wheel drive, I don't remember the exact name of this. Basically, it's a four-wheel drive interlock system. So there's a vac line that comes in back here. When you engage your four-wheel drive, if I'm not mistaken, the four-wheel drive or the vacuum stops, which then allows these teeth to engage. Okay. So there are teeth here that the CV joint are engaged in currently. Let me put this bearing on the floor and offer you a little bit better light. Now maybe you can see what I mean a little bit better. So on the back end of that wheel bearing, you can see that there's teeth there as well. Now as you press this wheel bearing in, or as you install it, this gives a little bit. This pushes back, okay? Because there's no vacuum on it right now or anything. So that's going to give a little bit, and the teeth are actually going to engage into that wheel bearing. Essentially, what your goal is to not smash those teeth or have them not lining up. It's bad juju on the whole project here. And basically it's just by feel, but you wanna, we're not gonna go crazy and put the impact on here to just tighten it all up. We're gonna do it all at once. Another pointer is to clean this up. This isn't, I mean, it's rust colored, but it's not bubbled up or anything. So we're going to leave that be. You could hit that with some emery paper or something to that effect. You're going to want to get a little grease in here is always a good idea. Nothing, you don't have to go crazy, but it will definitely keep corrosion down as well as ease the install. And I'm going to put just a dab, nothing stupid on these needle bearings, because you don't want it. Basically, you don't want any of that grease coming out, getting into these threads or anything of that sort. ABS cable, make sure that's up, facing up. That's the way it was before we took it apart. I'm going to slap just a little bit of that grease right here as well. There's an O-ring on the back side of this. Right here. I realize that's not focusing real well. There we go. But you can see it right here. So just to give that just a little bit of lube so that doesn't bind or come out of its home there as we're pushing it in. That should be pretty close to flush. Obviously we're going to pull it in a little bit with our bolts. But if it looks like it's sticking out, crazy amount, just make sure that you're getting it lined up properly. I'm just gonna hand tighten these bolts, get them all in, make sure they're lined up. No ratchet, no impact until you know the threads are lined up. And I'm actually going to use a ratchet to snug them down rather than the impact that way. And I don't take any chances of getting it all kinked up. Chances are it wouldn't, but better be safe than sorry. And I'm no master mechanic. I'm not a mechanic for that matter. So sometimes it's better to take a slow road and make sure you're not getting yourself into a pickle that you can't get out of. Always cheaper to go a little slower. And I don't know them. The teeth for that axle and whatnot, I'm not 100% sure I explained that right or if I've got it correct. But I do know that things can become an issue with it if you just jam everything back together. So when you tighten these, you want to do it in you got 4 bolts. So you want to do it in an X pattern. So I'm going to do the top right, bottom left, top left, bottom right. And just walk it back until it's about flush. Nothing too crazy tight until you can walk these back evenly. The torque spec for the bolts on the wheel bearing is 150 pounds, 150, which is quite a bit. But to keep things from falling apart when you're going down the road, you're going to want a little bit of muscle on it. The biggest piece of advice I can give you on this shop: disconnect that tie rod. It will make your life a lot easier. pretty much it, folks. Don't forget to reroute the ABS, get that plugged in. Make sure that when you make sure that as you fish it, you're not running it into any pinch points. Try to get it right back the way it was. Take pictures if you have to, if that will help you remember where it's got to be. To keep any dash lights on, or to keep away from any sort of ABS trouble. I mean, this is one line you don't want to go getting bad, then suddenly you've got conventional brakes, which isn't all bad either. That's what I grew up on. And that's pretty much it, folks. 150 pounds on the wheel bearing, and that's for the F-150, 09 to 14. If it's not an F-150, check your specs. Make sure you're doing it right. 150 on the tie rod, 148 on the cradle bolts that hold the caliper on. I want to say 20 foot-pounds on that axle joint. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, don't forget your backer plate, because I've done it before where you get everything back together and you turn around and there's your backer plate. So after I run this line up, I'm going to get that backer plate on once I'm all torqued up in the whole 9 yards down here. I'll do that off camera. I won't bore you with that. I hope this helps somebody somewhere along the way. If nothing else, to have a little fun with it, but mainly to save pockets full of cash. Thanks for watching. If for some reason you don't have a torque wrench, you can muscle stuff on there. I don't really recommend it. It's probably a much better idea to use the torque that they call for. And you don't have to go out and get a snap-on $9,000 torque wrench with the electronic and readout and all that jazz. This is a Craftsman. I don't know, it was 40 or 50 bucks, I think. But it does the trick. Make sure your torques are right. Better safe than sorry. You don't want anything vibrating loose, wheels falling off, God knows what. It's always better to make sure that your torque is right. Yeah, if you like what you see here, like the channel, subscribe. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.